to not be here. It's okay. We're going to get started. Again, does anybody have any questions about last week before I get started? Nobody sent me any emails or questions, so I have no knowledge if anybody does have any questions. We're good to go. We're going to get started. We took care of EPLs, the effective playing length corrections, and we took care of topography and finished fairways last week. This week we're going to begin with target. I'll stop for questions again at the end of each obstacle as we go. And feel free to send me an email if a question comes up after we log off. Or I know sometimes people are embarrassed to ask a question, but if you have a question, feel free to ask it. We appreciate that. The question probably needs to be asked. If you have a question, I can guarantee it. Somebody else also has a question, but if nobody asks it, I won't know to answer it. The schedule will be released later today as it is. I know I've been piecemeal putting everything through the system, but it's got to get out there. And I'm not frustrated at all with making all the phone calls. I know how frustrated all of you guys are not being able to log in, but guess what? It's 1,000 times worse on my world. We're going to get going. Again, I have too many screens open right now, and right now I am going to be okay. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. There we go. So starting with the obstacles, we're going to start with green target today. Green target is the probability of hitting and holding the green. It's based on the length of the shot and the size and shape of the green. Let's get started with that presentation. Love this little moment of, oh no, is this going to open or not? There we go, yay. So again, green target, it's the evaluation of the difficulty of hitting the green with the approach shot. So approach shot is the shot approaching the green. Somebody else is trying to get in. Here comes Scott. Here we go. So green target is based on three of the three things in the following. It's the green size of green, the approach shot length, green surface visibility and firmness. And the minimum green target number is 2. You'll never have less than a 2. To determine your calculated approach shot length, you want to subtract the distance any distance a player would cover after playing a full shots. Rewind. To determine the calculated approach shot length, subtract the distance the player would cover after playing any full shots to landing zones from the center of the hole, and anything that's left over, that's your shot length to the green. Anything less than a full shot. If your full shot is a driver to the green, good luck. That's probably a really long par 3. You want to consider any effective playing length corrections that may change the approach shot length. Roll, dog leg, force layup, or by choice, elevation, altitude. All of these things can affect the shot to the green. And each green, you want to think of it like a target. That target, it's like a dartboard. Oops, hang on a second. It's really weird. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Didn't look like never mind. It's all good. Think of the green as being like a dartboard. Some dartboards, however, unlike going to your local bar, some dartboards are really small and you're hitting really long shots to it, and some dartboards are really big. So think of it as the larger the green, the easier it is to hit. The shorter the shot, the easier it is to hit. The longer the shot, the smaller the green, the harder it is to hit. Quick measurements, ways to measure the green. Most greens can be measured by simply measuring the longest diameter on the green, regardless of the line of play. Pick the longest side and then measure the crossing diameter that is perpendicular to the first measurement line. It may be necessary to use an average of 2 or more measurements for some measurements because the green shape might be irregular. Quick look at this green. Even though your line of play is straight at an angle, You want to take that longest edge and the perpendicular measurement. In this case, the short edge would be the width and the long edge would be the depth. So in this case, width, if the width is 28 and the depth is 30 yards, 28 plus 30 equals 58. 58 divided by 2. The effective diameter is 29. 29 comes out of column 5. I'll show you where that column means in just a minute. That column information is pretty important because that is where we get all our green target numbers. Width versus depth. This is where the line of play can matter, especially if there is a transition zone in question. You really must list it width by depth because that is how I have to list it in the computer system. And if I get in there on this first situation, this first green that's indicated, you see 19 by 27. If I get our forms the next time and see 19 by 27, the next time I get it and I see I'm putting in 27 by 19, I don't know which one's width, which one's depth. Then I have to go back to Google Earth, do the measurement. So every time something like that is done incorrectly, it slows me down, which slows down the rating. Doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it adds up. If you always do width by depth, it's going to help me out tremendously. So width by depth, that distance really matters for transition, specifically if my green's that way or if my green is this way. Think about the difference that a green might have if you're at a short angle instead of a long angle. That can totally throw off your transitions. For odd-shaped greens, if one dimension is not consistent value, an average or weighted average should be used to better reflect that dimension. So in this green, I have a depth, the length of the course, the length of the green, sorry, is 30. But if I use the width, I have the short width here. The short width is only 14. The long width is 28. If I use either 14 or 28, it's either going to be way over or way underrated. So in this case, we're going to take the two, average the two, 28 and 14 equals 42. 42 divided by 2 is 21. So we would use the width of 21 by 30. Add it together, 51, 26. 26 is column 4. So just so you know a little bit of measuring greens before we even get into how those numbers come into play. When one dimension is more than, not equal to 32 times, but more than 2 times the other dimension, and add 1 long dimension and 2 short dimensions, and then divide by 3. In this case, this green is 32 deep by 15 wide. So you'd add 15 twice to 32. You get 62 divided by 3 is 20.6, which it rounds up to 21. Remember, we always use normal rules for rounding. 0.5 and higher, round up. 0.4 and lower, round down. If we measured and just did 15 by 32, it would give a green surface. It would give the 23.45, which rounds up to 24. And that would have put us in the column 4 and give an inaccurate green target for that green. When one dimension is more than 3 times, I'm gonna throw you on hold for a second before I do this. I have another person who is not connecting to the correct link. So hang on a second. I'm gonna get that email. Luckily, I kept it saved from sending it to Karen. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm going to send out a new link next week. Okay, so if you hear a ping in a minute, that might be Russ trying to get in. Okay, again, when one dimension is more than 3 times the other dimension. Again, more than, not equal to. So in this case, you're going to add one long dimension and three short dimensions and then divide by 4. So in this case, this green is 13 by 42. You add 14 plus 13 plus 13 plus 13 and divide by 4. So here 20.25 rounds down to 20. That ends up being a column 3 green. If we measured 42 by 13, it would end up being 28 and put us into column 5, which would really blow out the green target numbers. When you get to odd shaped greens, where the player can't putt from one section to another, for instance, a player, whoops, hang on, I'm trying to get my little laser pointer. A player from here can't putt over to here. Aha, there we go. I just got all in, there we go. Get Russ in here real quick and I'll keep going on here. So for instance, when I get a green one, I can't putt from a large section to another section. I can't putt from here to here. I can't putt either way. And we're going to use the circle concept. And in the circle concept, you're going to measure the first circle, the entire area. Notice there's going to be some overlap. You'll measure the entire area of the large section or one section and the entire area of the second section. In this case, we know that you might also have a weighted area. So we've talked to the superintendent or the head pro, and they normally use the larger section, this section, the most. So we're going to get the average of the larger section times 2, the average of the smaller section plus, 1 time, add them together and divide by 3. So in this case, we'd end up with column or 25, which ends up being in column 4. In the case of circle concepts with greens, you don't want to apply the 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 concept. That's a very specific thing. This is what I just described. The weighting is not the 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. That is actually saying that this side is used more. And remember, this doesn't mean if I had these two greens laying out flatter and there was just a tiny sliver over here that I couldn't put to a tiny sliver over here, say this green was filled in this area, remember where the flags are going to go. You're not going to have a flag on the very edge of the green. You should have flags a good pace or 2 in. So if it's just a tiny edge, you're not going to use the circle concept at all. My little laser pointer is not allowing me to use it as a pointer. There we go. To figure out the percentage of how often one section of the green is used, you can look at old hole plugs or ask the superintendent. You might have a section of green that has no plugs at all because they never use it for whatever reason. But we always have the option to ask the superintendent or the pro if we have to. A reminder, if you use the circle concept, you're going to add the U adjustment of +1. That gets added to the green surface. Okay. So if you're measuring using the circle concept, you want to think about measuring the entire area, again, where a ball can putt from. So this is one that's right on the bubble of needing to be measured using the circle concept. But in this hole, you could measure that entire area or that entire area, get them both together and measure the whole thing. That one's really on the bubble. That one's about as close to as you can get as to not using the circle concept. For tiered greens, for a green to be tiered, a green must have a minimum of 2 distinct plateaus of surface area. The elevation change area must include a significant portion of the green, and the ramp must be at least 2 feet. Little things to remember, for a tier to be a tier, think about if you're not sure whether a place that ramp is worthy of being a ramp, find a spot. That's one of the reasons we have a golf ball. Find the spot at the top of the ramp where a ball will roll down the hill. and then find a ball placed. Remember, not a ball dropped. And then go to the bottom of that ramp and find out where that ball placed will stop rolling. That tells you where the true top and bottom of the ramp are. Depending on the slope of the green, that may be longer or shorter than you think it is. But you'd still calculate the effective diameter of the green the same way you would on any other green. And if you do have a green that is tiered, you also want to add the adjustment of +1 to both scratch and bogey. And remember, bogey only gets an added +1 to green surface if a tier is applied. How to deal with two separate greens on one hole. We have a couple of odd situations in Oregon. The first thing to think about is, again, ask the pro or the superintendent which green is played more often. If it's a 50-50 split, it could change the green target and more. There might have to be a secondary rating. You could have white right and white left if that situation is a more permanent situation. In the case of this picture at Pronghorn, we were told, whether this is truth or not, because I've heard other things, we were told that the left green here that has no bunkers and no craziness around it is only used occasionally or more in the winter or more for events where you might not be posting a green. So because of that, we only counted the green to the right. I might have to have a second measurement, a second green, a second rating. And so in this case, we're just going to worry about the green to the right. In the case of band and crossing, both greens are used, resulting in a second set of course and slope ratings. Technically, 3. So the two greens, at band and crossings are on hole number 5. The typical green you're going to play to is down below. It's a par 5 hole. You have to lay up. There's a 20-foot elevation change. There's carry. There's all sorts of different things. The upper green is used for 2 different situations. If you're playing a 9-hole loop, they play 1 through 5 on the upper green, and then they play 16 through 18. If you've ever played band and crossings, it doesn't turn back at the clubhouse. It is what we call an out and back course. You go all the way out, and then you come all the way back. You don't turn at the clubhouse at all. So in order to get a 9-hole loop without having to cross the bridge and go to the other side, they kept this short green in play. And then they sometimes use this upper green also if this green, which is in the middle of the pond, is unused. Hang on a second. I have another person trying to get in. I'm going to definitely got to change that link for next week, though. Hang on a second. Oh, goodness. I have too many emails coming through and so much things open. All right, so we're pausing. We're pausing. Hang on one second. I am definitely going to put up a new link for next week, though, because this is just kind of get craziness with the having to let people into over and over again. I don't know why it works for some and not others. And anyways, so this situation, so there's 150 yards between the two. There's a par difference. It's like rating 2 complete different holes. When we rate this course, we're rating 2 holes. So if you get stuck rating the front side of Banner Crossings, you're literally rating 10 holes instead of 9, because you have to do 5 on the long and then also do 5 on the short. There's no other way around it on that one. Again, this one's used for twice. So they technically have 3 ratings. If you look at Man and Crossings, you have band and crossings. If I was playing the white tees, I play the white if I'm playing the lower green. I play white upper if I'm playing the upper green, or I could be using the north rating, and the north rating is the 9-hole loop. So that and it ends up being 3 course ratings worth of ratings for that one. How to measure conjoined greens. My best example is right here, North Course at Reserve, holes 1, 8, and 9. You want to look, or sorry, 1, 8, and 17. You want to look to where the old holes are no longer cut. So look for old cups. It's normally fairly obvious where the measured holes should end. And again, it's a good time to ask the superintendent or the golf pro where that end of the green would be. So on the hole number 1, we'd really measure only this section. You're going to stop at a smart place. This is a pretty easy to tell where the 2 sections stop. It's a little bit less easy to see where the 2 sections between 8 and 17 start and end. But you can still see there's a little ridge in here. So just kind of be smart about those things. We're going to have the situation on 9 and 18 at OGA in a couple of weeks. And number 17 is kind of linked here. For this course, there's a whole section of green that you're never going to count. It's kind of like when we have a hole that has a false front. You're not going to count that section of the false front. This section of the green is never going to be counted because you're never going to play that little area in the middle. All right, so here comes the table. Are you ready for it? So when I start talking about column numbers, this is what it means. This is the first time we've come to a point where you always want to enter from the left for scratch golfer and from the right for the bogey golfer. And you're going to enter at the appropriate shot length and then go to the column with the effective diameter. So a quick look here. When we start talking column number, if I have a green size where the effective diameter is between 22 and 26, that is a column 4 green. Smaller green, smaller number. Larger green, larger number. The majority of the greens in OGA are column 4 and column 5. We have a few 6s and big greens, and then we have quite a few smaller ones. We even have 1 or 2 number 1s, but those are few and far between. Quick example, if I had women on a par 3, and the par 3 is 125 yards, I have an effective diameter of 24. That is column 4. We're going to go from 125 for the scratch out to column 4. For bogey, we're going to go from the right, 125 to column 4 is a 6. For men, think of a par 4, 300 yards on a 300-yard hole. If it's a 20-yard effective diameter, that is column 3. So between 17 and 21, column 3. I have a less than 60 yards, so it's actually a 50-yard shot, 300 minus 250 for the scratch golfer. So 50 yards to, or less than 60 to a column 3 is a 2. For bogey, bogey is going to have a 150-yard shot in. So between 130 and 154 to column 3 is a 6 off of the green target rating. All right, I'm going to try and answer this one more time. Hang on a second. Give me a second to get this through. Hang on. I can't keep getting interrupted in the middle of this. Let me send that. So you understand the fact that you're coming in now from the left for scratch, right from bogey, left for scratch bail, right from bogey. Get used to that left scratch, right bogey is from here down. We're going to be doing that. All right. Here are some of the adjustments that go on green target. So visibility, if less than half of the green surface is visible. And that can be as much as I have the person out measuring the green and they're walking across and I can't see their feet. Two, I can't see their knees. I can't see them from the hips down, waist down, shoulder down, but I can still see the flag. If I can see the flag, it is a +1 for visibility at the green. If I can't see the flag at all, and it's completely blind, that is a visibility of +2. That is assigned per player, and it might be on a raised screen that the closer you get, the harder it is to see the flag. It could be that there are trees in the way. It depends on what's going on. But anything from I can't see the very surface of the green to I can see the flag is a +1. And if I can't see the flag at all, it is a +2. That goes to green target, and it is per player. It doesn't get assigned across the board unless everybody has the same condition. O is +1 if the approach to the green is obstructed by a tree in front of or overhanging the green. You would add the tree adjustment and you would add to the green target. The T adjustment, we've already talked about that. If the green is tiered, you would add the +1 to both scratch and bogey. If a green is unusually firm, where a ball will bounce off the green, you're going to add a +1. We don't get that very often as a permanent situation. You want to check, again, that's an ask the superintendent. Is this green more firm than normal? Or is it F-? If the green is unusually soft, shots to the green will leave a pitch mark or plug. It's easier to stay on the green if your ball plugs on the green. So that makes it a little bit easier, which is why it's a minus. And here's everybody's favorite subject, transition zones. What it used to be versus what it is now. Just a quick load and a quick look rather at what that is. And frankly, I know that causes a lot of stress, so I want you to relax a little bit. We're going to come back to this next Wednesday. I'm going to talk about that a little bit further, but we're going to take a break now. Does anybody have any questions about green targets? About how to measure, what a tier is, when to add, when not to add? We're good with that?
Hey,
Why is that frozen? Hi.
Just a question on the first item that you talked about. If the green is at a little bit of an angle coming in, how do you determine if it was kind of like an X shape?
Right.
How do you determine which is width versus length?
I'm going to go back quick. Luckily, there's only 17 flat slides on this one, so I'm going to go back real quick and take a look at that. Almost there. On this situation, it's kind of easy to tell. Finding the long edge and the short edge or the perpendicular is your first thing. Once you determine the long and the short, you can stand in the middle and literally put your arms out and face down that yellow line and figure out which level is closest to it. In this situation, okay, it's not working now. Come on, laser pointer. This angle here, oh gosh, it's driving me crazy. Here we go. Okay, so in this occasion, this angle here is closer to this line, so I would call that width. So like, again, I'm going to stand up right at this point and kind of put my arms out straight, turn towards the angle where I can see my line into the green and just see. And sometimes you're just going to have to wing it if it's really close. This one's pretty obvious that
Yeah.
this is length and that's width. And we do get a few that are really close to on the bubble. Um, just think about what makes sense in the situation.
Okay. If it gets to be where it's a perfect one way or the other, you just kind of flip a coin then.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good question. You get back to the end. Whoopsie, hello. Yeah, gotta get back to the end so I can get out of it. Ta-ta. Oh, actually, no, I can do the old thing and hit the escape button. So no more questions on green surface. It doesn't want to go. Let me out. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and check the R&R. Reminder that green target is really important because now we're going to recoverability and rough and bunkers. Both of those are based on the green target. So if the green target is wrong, then everything else is wrong too. So R&R, rough, recoverability and rough, we're going to call it R&R because I start saying weird things if I have to say it all together. It's the evaluation of the probability of missing the fairway landing zones and the green, and the difficulty of recovering if any of those are missed. You want to use the average height of rough adjacent to the fairway and green. If I have a rough that's cut to 3 inches, but every green is cut to 2 inches, we might want to call it 2.5. We don't have a lot of courses that do anything that weird. But we also have some adjustments that we can do to make up for that if it's split different. R&R is based on the green target values, the type and height of rough grasses, the rise and drop around the green, mounding adjacent to the fairway landing zones or at the green, other extreme rough conditions such as waste areas, gorse, rocks, etc., and the difference, if any, of rough in specific landing zones versus at the green. You might have an area of the rough that's really difficult in one area, but every place else is cut off. We have a way to adjust for that. So R&R charts. There's a single chart for men and women. It used to be two separate. They found a way to do it together, but you'll notice that there are a couple of differences. I will put those out. You want to use the sticky notes to block the opposite gender. If you're rating for men, you want to block the women's info, and or rating for women, block the men's info, because it might get a little confusing. Use the green target number for both scratch and bogey. The scratch player still comes in from the left, and the bogey player comes in from the right. Men come down from the top, and the women come up from the bottom. Slide over to the rough height column, and OGA only uses the cool season grass, even if we're in Central Oregon, high desert, or anything else. So here's a quick example. This is the chart. I'm going to point out from blue. The blue is the men's. Here you have 2 inches or less than 2 inches, right at the 2 inches, 2 inches to 2, 3, 3 to 4, and then more than 4. This is where that split happens. Less than 2 is the same, 2 is the same, 2 to 2.5. So this is where the men's and women's split. So if you have anyone that's 2 to 3 and 2 to 2.5, anything here higher, you definitely want to block out the gender that you're not rating for that day. Because women's then goes from 2.5 to 3.5, and then over 3.5. Reminder that we only use cool season grass, which is the upper number. You'll never have us rating using warm season grass. That's the one in braces. You get warm season, Arizona, Southern Cal, Texas, all the warm places, all the places where some of us would like to be, even though some of us are there, not pointing any fingers at y'all who've been nice and warm and sunny areas. So quick example, using 2-inch rough, the scratch green target of 4, and a bogey green target of 6. You find the green target. Scratch came in from the left. Start scratch rating of 4. Into 2 inches is a 3. Bogey had a 6. Slide it over to the number 2 column. You're at number 5. So a lot of us will take a little sticky note and just put a little sticky note at the top. If we know it's 2 inches, we know that we're always just going to go to that column. It's another sticky thing that I have in the box. You want to watch for tweeners and apply them where it's appropriate. Good example here, if it's 2 3/4 inch rough, so we're going to use this for women over 1. Remember, if that was men, we'd be in this column. For women, we're in this column. If I had a green target of 5 for women, it's going to be going to a 6. I have a bogey has a green target of 3. They're going to be going to a 5. Depending on the hole, if you'll notice, this could be a situation where you would be adding or looking at the tweener situation. Again, if I ever have that spot in the middle, if I'm just a little bit over 2.5, or if I'm closer to 3 inches, or if it was closer to 3.5 in this case, I might use that tweener. We're at 2 3/4. I'd probably stay in this normal range. If it was closer to 3.5 on a regular basis, I'd be using that tweener before jumping up to the next one. We don't use tweeners enough, I don't believe. That out. Some big things to think about on par 3 holes. For a long par 3 hole, it might end up being a 2-shot hole for a bogey player. It is still a par 3. If the bogey player cannot reach the center of the green in 1 shot, you want to rate the area short of the green under R&R using that 3 adjustment. And that, just a reminder, that landing area short of the green may have adjustments to R&R that you won't give to the person who's reaching the green. And you also want to use that 3 adjustment if the bogey player lays up for whatever reason. They can't reach it and there's a giant bunker in front, so they might lay up even further. You're still going to use the 3 adjustment. For 2 or more shot holes, some of the adjustments are shot specific. They're noted with an asterisk and may be applied in both the landing zone and at the green. For layup, for instance, if there were 2 layups, it might be a -2 layups. For mounds, inconsistent. Carry for bogey only may all be used multiple times depending on the course and the situation. All other adjustments apply to the hole in general. So adjustments, there are a lot of adjustments in R&R. There's a whole huge list. So we're going to go through these one at a time, and we're going to go in the order listed because they need to be applied in the order listed. Layup. If a player lays up, whether it's forced or by choice, or they hit less than a full shot due to a dogleg hole, they get a -L to R&R. Mounds. If grass mounds and hollows are present near the fairway landing zone, you want to consider their severity, number, and location. Again, long par 5, you might have 3 or 4 fairway landing zones that have mounds. You might want to start looking at the number of mounds and their location to find out whether you should use it on every landing zone. Mounds, again, is a +1 if a significant portion of the green is closely bordered by grass mounds or hollows, and or there is rise and drop of greater than 5 feet. You don't want to factor in any area that's closely bordered by bunkers. So that 5 up to or greater than 5 feet can be a little bit of uphill behind and downhill in front. They don't counter each other and eliminate each other off. That means that there's more of a section of more than 5 feet, uphill and downhill, not or. And if there's bunkers, you don't want to count the bunkers in that percentage. Mounds +2, if a significant portion of the green is closely bordered by severe grass, mounds, or hollows, or there's rise and drop of greater than 10 feet. We have about 3 holes in all of Oregon that use this point. You want to think about not overrating on some things that are kind of on the bubble on that too. Again, do not factor any area that's closely bordered by bunkers as well. Second page of adjustments. Extreme. So if a punitive feature such as stone wall, boulders, integral part of the, or something that's called an integral part of the golf course, a difficult area that you must play out of without penalty, unless you want to take a penalty, that is. That is in a landing zone or closely bordering a landing zone or the green would likely result in extremely difficult recovery shots. The punitive feature must not have been rated under another obstacle. So you can only give it that extreme issue one time. And I'm lumping all the inconsistents together. So a +1 if rough near a landing zone or closely bordering the green is much more severe. A -1 if the rough near the landing zone or closely bordering the green is less severe. You want to think about that. And that's more or less severe than the average rough height. +1 if a significant portion of the green is closely bordered by sloping ground cut to the height that results in shots just missing the green. I can't say all that in one sentence. Ending up much further from the green, making recovery more difficult. The par 3, number 7, I believe, at Langdon Farms, might be 6. That green is just a big mound, and if you are off the green this far, you're sliding away at least 10 feet instead of a lot of holes where you just kind of roll off the edge. And another +1 if extensive areas of hardpan near the green create difficult recovery issues. I don't know about you, I would much rather chip off a little bit of grass than hardpan. But wait, there's more adjustments. They just keep coming. If you have applied a surround adjustment of +2 to lateral obstacles, you will give also a +1 to R&R. And you might not know that until you get to lateral before you come back. It's a pretty easy one to check, and it's very rare for us to have a +2 at lateral that deserves that. A 2 adjustment. If the rough closely bordering 2 or more landing zones on a par 5 or 3-shot hole, that might be a long par 4 for bogey, is at least 4 inches for men or at least 3.5 inches for women. I have a hole that is thicker than every other golf hole. We might add the +1 for extra tough normal rough. That's not extreme rough, that's just the regular rough. For bogey rating only, male or female, you can have a +1 if the bogey player can't reach the center of the green on a par 3 hole in one shot, or if they lay up to an area short of the green and it is at least 20 yards wide and cut to fairway height. The bogey adjustment of +2 is the same thing if you get to the bogey player that can't reach the green on a par 3 and it's less than 20 yards wide and cut to fairway height, or that no such area exists. If you lay up and it's still rough, you get either the +1 or the +2, or sorry, no fairway cut at all, you get a +2. And the final adjustment, and remember, you want to use these in order, there's plenty of reasons for that, is the carry adjustment. There is its own chart right here, and it says bogey carry adjustment table. That means you can't use it for scratch. And you can have from a +1 to a +4 depending on the situation. On this quick example, if I had 2.5 inch rough and it was over 175 yards to the fairway, scratch would get a +1 to his R&R. If it's 115 yards from the tees that the women are playing, it is a +1 also to add. I can't talk today. You'd have a +1 added to the R&R for women. And a quick note about this, you don't want to think about safe carry. It says it right there. If we had a calibration quiz where it was like exactly 155 yard carry, 160-yard carry would have had us, or 165 adding the safe carry would have got us a +1. 155 would have given us a 0. So you don't count safe carry in this example. It's right there on the chart, so you don't have to look deep for that explanation. Here's a quick example of a par 3 hole. Green targets have been provided as a 5 and a 7. The rough is 2.5 inches. You have right out of the chart, I would have a 5 for scratch and a 6 for bogey. But if you notice, the area around the green has mounds or hollows with 7 feet rise and drop. So down here in front of the green, it's 7 feet to get up to the green. And then you've got this area behind that's 7 feet behind. And it fits the bill for a +1 on mounds. That brings my 5 to a 6 for scratch and the 6 to a 7 for the bogey. Quick example of the par 3 adjustment. For women on a 175-yard hole, the scratch can make the center of the green, so it's a par 3. The bogey is 25 yards short of the center of the green, and the area short of the center of the green is 8 yards wide at the beginning and 18 yards wide at the widest. So at no point is that more than 20 yards wide. And that would result in a 3 adjustment of +2. Big reminder, you want to measure all of the obstacles in the area short of the green when a bogey can't reach the green. In this instance, the bogey would receive topography, but not the elevation from the green that the scratch might get. They would get credit for a fairway bunker. Basically, you're not going to take off the no adjustment for the bunker to the left of the green. I'll go back to that picture real quick. So that bunker is near their landing area, so you definitely would give them credit for the fairway bunker, even though they don't have a fairway. They would get a higher tree number than what is at the green because that's a 2-shot hole, not a par 3 hole. And what a bogey does not get ever on a par 3 is a fairway number. I'm going to go over this and try to beat it into your heads because I have to get it all the time. I have to correct this one. The course rating program even blocks me. This is so never can be higher than a 0. I can't put a number there at all. There is 0 way for me to put a number in fairway for a par 3. Layup adjustments. Here's a layup adjustment example where a scratch male cannot carry the first crossing safely, and so they have a forced layup. And since they had to lay up, now they have to not lay up again because of this second carry. In this case, they would receive a -L of 2, -2 on their R&R because they had to play less than a full shot off the tee and then less than a full shot off the fairway. Extreme. This natural rock wall behind or beside a green could make it extremely difficult for recovery shots. An example of surround, this is one of the few examples of surround that we can get to that has a +2. Add a +1 to R&R if the surround of +2 was added to lateral. In the case of this green, between water or lateral and out of bounds and everything in between, they end up with a +2 on surround for lateral. At this point, you can add a +1 to everybody who plays that hole to their R&R. Note for people who remember the old charts, there used to be a +3 on surround, which would give a +2 to R&R. That's gone. So a reminder to the old guard, we don't have that adjustment any longer. Does anybody have any questions about the 8,000 adjustments that are in recoverability and rough? There's a lot going on there. Good. Last call for questions. Hit the raise hand and I'll stop. Okay. We're going to back out and go back to talking about bunkers. Quick definition: the effect bunkers have upon our base. Whoosh. The effect bunkers have based on their proximity to target areas. Let's go. Let's get this one going. So we are going to evaluate how bunkers come to play and how difficult they are to recover from. The bunker ratings are based on green target rating values, fraction closely bordered by bunkers, the fraction of the green that is closely bordered by bunkers, and the existence of fairway bunkers. The difficulty of recovery from bunkers, which includes the size, the depth of the bunker lip, the sand condition, and carry, can all be factored into the difficulty of recovery. Quick look at the bunker chart. You want to use the green target number for scratch coming in from the left and bogey coming in from the right. This one is not gender specific. Men or women, it's using the same table on this one. We're going to measure the fraction of the green closely bordered by bunkers. Closely bordered, remember in the definitions, that is within 10 yards. If the bunker is 12, 13, 14 yards away, we can't use that bunker as a green side bunker. And then you want to use the depth chart to add depth where appropriate. A quick look at the green side bunker table. Again, right there, green side bunker table. Can't use it anyplace else. If you're not at the green, you can't use it. If I had a green target of 5 and the bunker was quarter to half, zip right over there, quarter to half. If I have a bogey's green target rating of a 2, but it's a half to 3/4 around, it's a 3 right off the chart. Another note to think about is this assumes that there are bunkers near a fairway landing zone, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment when we get to that adjustment. So fraction of bunkers, fraction of bunkers. I'm getting my words mixed up today. You want to measure to the nearest quarter. We don't care about thirds or fifths. I might give you a third as an example to let you think about how much a third means. But you're going to measure to the nearest quarter. Going back to the chart, it's by quarter. More than 0 to less to a quarter, quarter to half, half to 3/4, 3/4. There's your quick example. The chart is applied to green side bunkers only. If there are no green side bunkers, you have to add all the adjustments together, starting at 1, meaning the bunkers exist, and you skip that chart altogether. There will be an example of that. Round greens are really easy to measure using pie wedge method. Literally stand there, go to the edge of the bunker, next edge of the bunker, find the next edge of the bunker, this edge of the bunker to that edge of the bunker. If I'm here, it's less than a quarter. If I'm here, it's more than a quarter. If I can't reach it, it's probably more than half. We have very few 3/4 plus. They're fun to rate when you get there, though. So the pie wedge method works really good on round or close to round greens. When you get to oddly shaped greens, it's hard to pie wedge if your green has really odd edges. So what you want to do on that situation for now, USGA is working on something, is you want to literally walk around the edge of the green, counting how many steps have bunkers, how many steps don't have bunkers, add them together and compare. Grass bunkers or hollows are considered mounds and are rated under R&R. Sometimes we get to a course and a sand bunker, they've stopped maintaining it and they're turning it into a grass bunker. If you're not sure, again, we can ask the superintendent or the pro at the course, is it that they're just behind on maintenance or they're changing it to a grass? So Are they changing it to a mound, or is it still a bunker? We can ask those questions. Prepared waste areas are rated under bunkers and R&R. And you're welcome to use math and use pi 3.14 blah, 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 blah to determine the fraction of the green. I'm not that mathy. You guys, if you can figure out how to do it, have at it, enjoy yourselves. But I am not mathy enough to figure that one out. The step-off method. Walk around the green and count steps without bunkers and steps with bunkers. I don't even add this together. Literally, if this first section, this section without is 50, this section with is 15. I start this next section at 51, so I'm not even adding. I start this 51 to 70. And then I start this next section of bunker from, this one went up to 15. This one starts at 16 and goes out to 27. So you don't even have to add. You just have to write down where you're left off with the with and without. In this situation, with and without, when you look at the math, 27 is more than a quarter and less than a half of 70. It's not too hard to get that sorted out. If you have a course with a bunch of holes, we're right at a quarter. So every time you get there, it's a quarter, it's a quarter, it's a quarter, but right on should be a half. That's one where you might want to start talking about toggling. Give this one less than a quarter, give this one quarter to half, for an example. But just be careful not to over measure. So again, it's up to a quarter, more than a quarter to a half. Here are some of the bunker adjustments. If obstacle squeeze occurs because the distance between bunkers that border both sides of a fairway landing zone is less than 30 yards, you add a +1 if a player is in that landing zone. And it's a +2 if obstacle squeeze occurs because the distance between bunkers that border both sides of the fairway landing zone is less than 20 yards. Carry, if a player must carry a significant bunker to reach a fairway landing zone. For a scratch player, it must be near the start of the fairway landing zone. Remember, for near, that can be a 20 yard. So if my landing zone is 100 rolling closer to the green to 80, it can be out to 120 yards. If it's near the front of that landing zone, you have to be there for it to count for a scratch player. For bogey, anywhere along the landing zone, 20 yards past the end of the landing zone to the end of the landing zone, you will count that as carry. The next C adjustment is if a player must carry a bunker that protects a significant portion of the green. For scratch player, it must closely border the green and the green target rating must be 5 or greater. If a scratch has a 4 or less for a green target, it doesn't matter how much of the front of the green is protected. For a bogey, they may be anywhere along the line of play with no minimum green target. E, my favorite extreme. If punitive bunker features make recovery from fairway or greenside bunkers extremely difficult. Pot bunkers, stacked sod face bunkers, extreme rough that interferes with a swing, very large bunker, extremely large bunker, or a series of bunkers causing a long carry over sand, etc. To qualify, the bunker must be closely bordering the green or near the fairway landing zone. And the extreme +2, if the features listed above impact the fairway bunker and restrict options to playing out sideways or backwards, causing substantial loss of distance on the shot. If I'm in a bunker and can play, an 8 iron, 9 iron out going forward, I'm going to use the +1. If my only option is sideways or backwards in an area where I should be hitting a 3-wood, that should be an extreme of +2. We have very few of those in the state. A quick example of squeeze. There's only 10 yards between these two bunkers, which would result in a 2 squeeze adjustment. A case might be made to lay up the golfer if the bunkers were more punitive. In this case, it's the scratch golfer's landing zone, and the bunkers are less than 2 feet, and it's close to the green. That same fairway, if this was out at a spot where I'm hitting a 3-wood or a full fairway shot, I'd be laying up the golfers. They're close to the green. If they get in there and it's a scratch player, they can chip out pretty easy on that situation. Reminder that squeeze is now measured from edge of bunker to edge of bunker. We used to have to measure from the center of the fairway to the edge of the bunker. They've changed that. So edge of bunker to edge of bunker. A couple of extreme examples. How much fun would it be getting out of that bunker? I know that would probably take me 3 or 7 shots. The church pews. Trying to get out of here when you've only got a few yards between these mounds and going forward would be nearly impossible. These bunkers where they're lined up, bunker, 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 where I can get out of this bunker and I'm in that bunker. I can get out of this bunker and then I'm in that bunker. That's where you want to start thinking about the extra trouble you can get in if you're a little bit offline. Greenside bunker depth of +1 to +4. If the depth of bunkers is more than 3 feet for men, 2 feet for women, consider their number, location, and difficulty of recovery. Greenside bunker table can only be used for greenside bunkers. Not fairway bunkers, not the big old thing 150 yards out, but greenside bunkers. And it's also assessed on the depth of the bunker. It's how to get out of the bunker, not just the depth. If I have a bunker with a short lip, but I have grass and green to get out, you want to get out of the bunker onto the surface. A quick example of bunker depth. This is the par 3 at that bar run. On this par 3 hole, you want to think about a reasonable distance from the edge of the green. So that's at this point, that green section, which is not too far from the edge of the green, would be considered close to the side of the bunker. That would be considered a greenside bunker. When you start getting the fact, I understand that this bunker, you can end up at 15 yards deep, but this red section is not even close to the edge of the bunker. So even though this bunker is connected, I'm not going to give the full depth of that red section of the bunker because you shouldn't be there. You want to think about the area that's going to be make the most sense, most impact to if you're just missing the green. So that section to the left, that red section would have been a +4 on depth. This green section would be about a +2. You just wouldn't even count it if that red section were the only bunker here. It wouldn't even be counted as a greenside bunker. Here's some more bunker adjustments. No is a -1. You reduce the table value by 1 on a 1-shot hole, a reachable par 3, because there is no fairway. There is no fairway bunker, unless the bogey is in that area. But we'll talk about that on the next one. No -1. Reduce the table value by 1 on a 2 or more shot hole if there are no fairway bunkers near any of the landing zones. Greenside bunkers do not count as fairway bunkers unless the player has a landing zone just short of the green and the greenside bunkers are near the landing zone. No more give it to the bogey if it exists. Any bunkers need to be near a landing zone for it to be included as a fairway bunker. There's a few more fairway adjustments. The 2 adjustment. 2 is a +1 if there are fairway bunkers in 2 or more landing zones on a 3 or more shot hole. In this example, bogey player has fairway bunkers near both of their landing zones, resulting in a 2 adjustment of +1. Just because it's called a 2 adjustment doesn't mean it's a +2. I've seen that once or twice. That's, it's a 2 adjustment because it happens 2 times, 2 or more times. So when you're looking at every reminder that you look at every landing zone and you're going to mark whether yes, there is a fairway bunker, or no, that there is not. If I get 2 yeses, I get a +1. And the big reminder that near means within 20 yards of the beginning and end of the fairway landing zone. So that's approximately a 60-yard long area with your true landing zone in the middle. If it's anywhere along that, it is a +1 example, or that's where that fits. Anyways, excuse me. If there are no greenside bunkers, I'm going to go back to this golf hole because it was a fun one. If there are no greenside bunkers at all, in this case, these bunkers short of the green are not within 10 yards. They're about 20, 25 yards off the green. So in this case, you're going to start your information with 1, bunkers exist on this hole because there's so many. You have them in your near or along the line of play, so they definitely want to exist. And then you're going to add any further adjustments as you can. So the bogey player has a carry to get to his fairway landing zone, so there's a carry. Scratch player has a carry, but it's not near his landing zone, so he's not going to get this carry. You have the bogey shot again, where these are not near enough for his, and then the scratch ends up between them. So he has a yes here and a yes there. And since he's between these, he also has that squeeze. So here comes the good math on this one. So quick example. The bogey has 1 because they exist, 1 because of carry off the green, 1 because extreme, all those bunkers lined up, or even that first one with the turtlebacks in it. And then another one because it's near to the landing zones. So yes, I'm sorry, the one that's getting closer to the green is near enough to be considered a fairway landing zone. Scratch has 1 because they exist. They have a +2 because of squeeze, so +2 because those bunkers are within 20 yards of each other, and then a +1 because they're near 2 landing zones, which gives them a total of 4. Again, you've not even used the green target the green size target, green size green size bunker table. The green side bunker table doesn't apply because there's no green side to bunkers. All that's just on examples. We have a yes with the squeeze +2, so I have 2 yeses. That gives you a 2 adjustment. A yes, carry extreme, and a yes. So that brings up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because of the 2. That should be a 5 because of the 2 adjustment. Oh no, sorry. 1 yes, 1 for the 2, 2 for the squeeze as well. I have a yes, I have a quick carry, extreme, and then another yes for the 2 adjustment, which gives you a total of 4. Questioning myself now at this point. So here's a quick example of bunkers. The bunker fraction in this green is less than or between 0 and 1/4. It has significant carry. The carry going across here, carry going across is significant. It is 4 feet in depth for your average depth, and it is par 3 hole that both golfers reach. If I start with my green target of 5 and 7, my bunkers start at 3 and 4 right off the chart. I have a carry of +1. I have a depth of +1. I have a no adjustment of -1 for a net adjustment of +1. So that the 3 and the 4 become 4 and 5. Lots of numbers there. Everybody understand that so far? Does anybody have any further questions about bunkers? Reminder that you are muted. So if you have a question, unmute yourself or hit the raise hand or hit the chat, whatever works. Good? All good to go on? Oh, let me turn off my laser pointer again. All right, we're going to go back and we're going to start about crossings and laterals. We want to talk about them together because they have so much that's combined. So crossing is the distance to safely carry penalty area, extreme rough, or out of bounds. Lateral is the distance, is the lateral distance to penalty area, extreme rough, or out of bounds. Come on, open. I love it how it warns me not to open the thing that's on my same computer. Come on, you can do it. We are slow. Whoops, it jumped on me. Again, since these two are kind of intertwined, we want to discuss them at the same time. A quick note about the difference between the current penalty area and the former water hazard. It allows for the course to designate any area on the course as penalty area, and that allows for lateral relief versus stroke and distance penalties. I could go through this whole thing here. So the recommendations for marking is beyond marking the traditional water areas as penalty areas. We still want to have it that if it's carry only, it should be marked as carry a regular penalty area. So you have to carry the distance to get over. It should be marked as yellow. If it's lateral, left or right, it could be marked as red. In areas previously related that we could not call water hazards because they didn't have water in them can now be called penalty areas. I think my biggest example is Heron Lake's Great Blue. If anybody's played out there, they have these big mounds. The big mounds have tall grass. They wanted to give lateral relief from them forever. We couldn't rate that way because the only way you could give lateral relief was from a water hazard. You can't have water hazard on the top of a mound. You can't carry water on top of a mound. Now that they can determine those to be penalty areas, we can rate that way. So we want to talk to the golf course and find out if they've added the penalty area relief rules or if they are playing strict stroke and distance penalties. We want to talk to the golf course about that because that does impact a little bit of how we rate the golf course. Going back straight to crossing. Crossing consists of any penalty area, extreme rough, or out of bounds, which are carried to play the hole. Nobody thinks of carrying out of bounds. Let's go to Crooked River Ranch. Sorry, Crooked River Ranch. I believe it's hole 5. If you're on one of the back tees and can hit it far enough, you can carry over the out of bounds. Normally, we're carrying over rough or penalty areas. Multiple crossings on a hole are evaluated separately for each shot. Off the tee, it's the same distance for everybody if everybody can carry. Once you get into the fairway, you have to assess each carry differently because the different players and the different tees have different shot lengths. Safely carry is considered about 10 yards beyond the far measure of the obstacle. If I have a penalty area that is marked right at the edge of the water, but there's a steep chart, I want to get to the end of the steep where it's going to, and then start measuring that 10 yards safe carry. If I'm going to hit the edge of what is mowed to fairway height, but it's going to roll right back into the water, that's not a safe carry. So get to a point where a ball can hit the ground and keep going and not come backwards. Short carries over water obstacles can result in a 0 crossing value. When a crossing obstacle exists and there is no lateral obstacle off of the table, the value of 1 is recorded under lateral obstacles to satisfy the exist concept. I have a hole with a 30-yard crossing in front. There is no lateral left or right anywhere along the rest of the hole. I have to put something in somewhere. Just that one little point somewhere will carry it. If there is a lateral value, no additional value is applied. I have lateral somewhere along the hole. We can ignore that little creek at 30 yards. Here's a quick look at the crossing tables. They are back again, we're gender specific. Scratch on the left and bogey on the right. So we're not coming in now, we're going down. And it's, again, it's the length of the shot to safely carry. Two quick examples for men, a tee shot on a par 3 hole. It's 155-yard carry, safe carry for scratch. It would be a 3 off of the chart. 155 yards for bogey off of the tee. He can get a 6. Note that asterisk. It's very important. If this bogey player, scratch player, female, male or female, doesn't matter. If you're on the fairway hitting a crossing that has this asterisk number next to it, you're probably supposed to be laying up. Because this bogey player off of the fairway hits at 170, that means he's only hitting, remember that 20-yard rollout area. That 170-yard shot has to land at about 150. If that's a 155-yard crossing, he can't carry the 150. Just because it's 170 yards to the finish line, you can't get to the finish line if he's in the water. So again, off of the tee, you can use this row, or at elevation on secondary shots, you might be able to use this row. When you're off of the fairway, you should think about not going further than this row and potential layups. So a second or third shot, depending on the hole. For women, if scratch has a 145-yard crossing, it's a 3 off of the chart. If bogey has a 65-yard crossing, it is a 3 off of the chart. Remember, off of fairways, if I have 3 tees that we are rating, and it's not a tee shot carry. Tee shot carries are easy because you can just mathematically figure it out and everybody has to carry it. If I have a fairway crossing that everybody has to get across, you might have a different number for everybody, and every player needs to have a crossing number unless they can go around it somehow. That's how those are listed. When you're playing off of the tee, it should be in the first landing zone. If it is second or further shot, I didn't have the crossing off of the tee, or else it would be the same number. That crossing was to get to the second shot. It should be here. For the bogey, it wasn't on the tee. It was a crossing to get to the second shot, so it should be in this area. Just a little reminder of where those should go. And that's where the numbers come out when you're looking at them. Here are some of the crossing adjustments. C of +1 if the carry over a crossing obstacle closely borders the front of a green. I can only use this at the green. If it's right at the front of my landing zone in a fairway, doesn't matter. It's only at the green. So in this situation, this pond here is right in front of the green. That's when we would add a +C adjustment. If I have a 4 or 3 for my crossing, using the previous example, 3 for scratch and 3 for scratch and a 6 for the bogey, that brings me up to a 4 with a C and a 7 with a C for that same crossing. Carry may have occasions where it is not applied to all shots on one hole. For this example, I have a scratch can hit across to the green, but the bogey is going to land in the water. So they play out to the side. So they're going to end up with a dogleg adjustment, but no crossing in this situation because they can play around it. That's the one occasion where you're going to have a situation where you can play around this green. This green, sadly, we will never be playing around again because it was at Quail Valley, and I'm going to cry just thinking about it because Quail Valley is now a housing community, and I am sad. Here are some crossing adjustments. Percentage, if a crossing is narrow and only partially, or can be is narrow, only partial, or can be played from some of the time, consider using an appropriate percentage of the table value to determine the shot rating value. 25%, 50%, 75. Don't get crazy with your percentages. Just keep it simple. In this situation, if a player hit a ball and I needed to change that to white, apparently it's changed colors when I changed the adjustments. That ball is short of the water. I have no penalty hitting it. The only thing I lose right there is a little bit of pride for hitting such a poor shot. Versus if this entire area were pond, that ball's gone and I've lost a stroke and probably distance in this situation. So if anybody's played Portland Golf Club, I think that's my favorite two examples. I need to put them side by side on a slide one of these days because the distance to carry the creek on 12 is almost the same distance to carry the pond on 11. And this creek is way less problems than if you're short on a pond. Further crossing adjustments. If the crossing is narrow, only partial or can be played from some of the time. In this one, that's a very narrow crossing and it's right at the green. I'm still going to take off a percentage, but in this case, probably only 1 point or just 25%. The former one, I'm going to take off 50, maybe even 75%. This one, I still need to take off something because short of the green, I can still play that shot easily, but that's still kind of a weird shot getting over there. More crossing adjustments. If a crossing obstacle comes into play on 2 or more shots, each rating must be 5 or greater to have a 2 adjustment. If the adjustment is made, they come, and this 2 adjustment happens several times. If I have a crossing of 5 and a crossing of 5, 5 and 5 are 10, 5 or 6 are 11, I add a +1. If something adds up, if I have 2 crossings and they add up to 12 or more, it is a +2. Revisiting the hole that we talked about in R&R, the bogey golfer has 2 very long safe carry shots. They would have had a 5 if they have a 5 on both shots. 5 + 5 = 10. They would have had a 2 adjustment, a +1 on a crossing for a total crossing of 6. In the case of this particular hole, both of those penalty areas should have had a percentage applied as they are often dry and can be played and the player can recover and play out of them. If there was a 25% reduction, both of those shots would have been dropped to a 4, so no 2 adjustment would have been applied. Again, that shows why applying the adjustments in order is important. If I just give them, applied the 2 adjustment and did the percentage after, it brings it down to a 4, or it brings it down to a 4 instead of a 6. Here are some crossing examples. Big long pond, that probably this situation, I would have the distance plus a C because that's right at the edge of the green. This crossing is more of an extreme rough situation. That crossing is closer to the player, but still a crossing. It may or may not count. It might count for the bogey, but not the scratch, depending on the distance. And this crossing would possibly be partial. I have tall grass here and through the whole thing, but there's a section here that you can play from. The fact that you might have bounce to OB, that's a different story altogether. But for the crossing itself, because there's only a partial crossing, you might have to take that down, because if I land anywhere in here, I have no problem whatsoever. And this crossing, which is a course that kind of looks familiar, but I'm not sure exactly where it is. Anyways, this hole, obviously you've got sand and extreme rough and lots of stuff down there. Again, crossing doesn't have to be just water. It can be lots of different things. Now we're going to start talking about lateral. Lateral consists of penalties, extreme rough and out of bounds, when they come into play laterally on the hole. You want to evaluate the lateral obstacles, how they come into play for each shot, and it's based on two factors. It's the shot length required to reach the landing zone, whether it's fairway or green, and then the distance to the lateral obstacle from the center of the landing zone. A big reminder, we don't care what color the stake is, if it's either right or left or both, and it's a penalty area, ER or OB, it is lateral. We don't only count it if it's red stakes. That's a water hazard thing. We don't talk about water hazards anymore. Penalty area, rough, out of bounds, left or right, it's in the lateral section. Quick look at the lateral table. The tables are gender specific. Scratch comes in from the left, bogey comes in from the right, scratch from the left, bogey from the right for women as well. You want to think about the length of your shot. Your full shot or shot off the tee is going to be down on the boat on the very bottom row. Secondary shots are typically the next row up for full shots, unless you're at elevation, Central Oregon, you might be back to the bottom row for full shots. And then the shot to the green is your approach shot distance. Couple quick looks at this. For men, the second or subsequent shot on a hole, that's a 140-yard shot. There's lateral 35 yards away. That is a 2 right off the chart. For bogey, bogey has a 160-yard shot, and that is to a 26-yard lateral. That is a 4 right off the chart. On a tee shot, for example, where both scratch and bogey are hitting 125 yards, but it's only 18 yards lateral, scratch would be a 5. Bogey would scratch would be a 4 and bogey would have a 5. Again, remember, scratch coming in from the left, bogey coming in from the right. Lateral adjustments plus bounce. If the conditions, cart path or sloping ground, increase the likelihood that a ball will bounce into an obstacle. Do not use if the distance from the center of the landing zone is less than 15 yards. So if you're in that far right column, you don't use the plus bounce. Minus bounds, if conditions, a tree, a fence, a bunker, any other obstacle decreases the likelihood that a ball will bounce or fly into the obstacle, or if the obstacle is only behind the green. If something's only behind the green, we're going to knock it down 1, no matter what, unless it's like water that's a pace off of the green. Might not do that. Depends on a little bit about the distance. K, and they call it K for stroke and distance. The K in stroke is where they get that letter K, because when the stroke and distance, anyways, this came up in 2019 with the rules change. So that's where the letter K comes into effect. It's +1 if the area is not treated as penalty area and the stroke and distance penalty applies, and it could be out of bounds or where a ball is likely to be lost in extreme rough. Do not use if the rating is a table value of 1. So it could be a table value of 2 minus bounce to a 1, you don't add the K. If the table value is a 1, you don't add the K. K is also not applied in crossing. Stroke and distance penalty is assumed when it's a straight crossing shot. So it only applies to lateral. Quick example, you want to think about for percentage. The percentage of an obstacle is narrow or only borders part of the landing zone. It can be played from some of the time or if there's a significant barrier, a tall net, steep slope, or something that minimizes the chance that a shot would reach the obstacle. Consider using the appropriate percentage of the table value plus above adjustments to determine the rating value. In this case, a lateral area in this red section would be full value, since the penalty area is all along the entire landing zone. The penalty area of, the green section, however, since it's more in the front of the landing zone, so it's more likely you're going to get into it, you would reduce your chart value by about 25%. And if you were in this yellow section, since the only part you're going to have that can actually reach that penalty area, you'd have to go through a tree to get there. You might even reduce this penalty area by up to 75%. So think about what's going on in the area of your landing zone to when you want to start thinking about percentages. Lateral area of squeeze. If you have a distance between two lateral obstacles that border both sides of the fairway and it's less than 40 yards wide, if you have it's a +1. If you have an area that is less than 30 yards from side to side on a fairway landing zone, now again, that's all fairway landing zone, not at the green, that would be a +2. That can be any combination of out of bounds, extreme rough, and penalty areas. Quick example here, Juniper, I can't remember if it's 9 or 18, but you've got a lateral to the left of penalty area. You have extreme rough to the right, and it's only 32 yards from edge to edge. You'd add a Q adjustment of +1 to anyone in this landing area. Some more lateral adjustments. The surround, if of +1 or +2. If the green is closely surrounded by a crossing or lateral obstacles, and it can be any obstacle it is. The green target rating must be 5 or greater for the scratch, but maybe any value for the bogey player. Example of the green, or example of a green target, or sorry, a green that is surrounded more than 75% of a combination of out of bounds and penalty area. At about about a quarter is less than 5 feet from the edge, but the rest is between 5 and 10 yards. Yards. A quarter of it is between less than 5 feet is only about a quarter, and the rest is between 5 and 10 yards. So it's a surround 1. Big reminder on this one. The surround number is applied to the at the green lateral number. It's not applied to the fairway landing zones or any other section. Since the surround is only at the green, you would apply it at the green. So there's your quick example here, this green. And you want to, if you applied a +1, or sorry, a +2 adjustment, you'd also apply under R&R. So this green is more than 75% surrounded, just less than a quarter is within 5. The rest of it is 5 to 10. I have more than half. Between 5 and 10 is just a +1 to the green, or the lateral at the green. Excuse me, let me grab a sip of water here. Excuse me. So more lateral adjustments. The 2 adjustment of +1 or +2. If lateral obstacle comes into play on 2 or more shots, each rating must be 5 or greater, table value plus adjustments. And the adjustment is made to the highest of the separate shot evaluations. You're going to add all values of 5 or greater. If they total 11 or less, they total 10 or 11, it's a +1. If they total 12 or more, it's a +2. Come on, there we go. So if a lateral of 7 on the drive and a lateral of 5 on the second shot, it adds to 7 plus 5 equals 12. A 2 adjustment of plus 2 would be added to the highest value. 7 plus 2 equals 9. You don't average those two together or anything crazy. You just take that highest number and add the 2 adjustment to it. Here's some good examples of lateral. I have left out of bounds, right, left of penalty area. That's a pretty big water hazard out there when you're talking about the ocean. So left is penalty area, right is out of bounds. This left area is all out of bounds. This right area is all penalty area. You've got all sorts of fun stuff with trees hanging out. This left section here, you can notice that it doesn't look like there's a lot of water out there. Remember that one of your options for the rules of golf, if I can stand in that penalty area and play, I just can't ground my club. So depending on where that shot actually landed, he could play out of there if he wanted to. There's a great example of some really gnarly rough. My ball gets in there, the chances of getting out of there are extremely low. Versus if I had an area that had extreme rough, but then had some stuff on the side that I could get out of, I could also reduce that penalty area or take a percentage of it off. For those who've been doing this for a while, we used to have a Y or two-way. That would mean if I had something that I crossed and also was lateral, I could adjust that. That is gone now. And we had a Jeopardy so you could play away from it, and that is gone now as well. So if anybody remembers those, don't use them because they don't exist anymore. Notice they are not in your books. Does anybody have any questions about lateral or crossings? Everybody good? Reminder, I have everybody muted, so if you're trying to ask me a question, I cannot see you. You can hit the raise hand button if you want to, or hit the chat button. I see no chats or anything coming in. Okay, good to go on. Okay, we're gonna keep it going. Glad I got extra stuff done today. I think we're gonna about get through trees, and we're coming up on 5 o'clock pretty quick. I think I can get through trees and possibly even talk about the homework that I got up today. I got it up late, so I'm not expecting everybody to get through it. But honestly, I'll have to pull the pictures over because I managed to not get them added properly to the PowerPoint presentation. Come on, there we go. Okay, so trees. Trees is the overall impact of trees on the play of the hole. Once the entire hole has been evaluated for trees, a rating value must be assigned based on whether the trees are minor, moderate, significant, or extreme, right off the charts. Generally, the impact of trees in the tee shot landing zone will be the most important factor in determining the tree's rating for the hole. So again, if you see trees off the tee, and those are the hardest trees on the hole, I don't have to have you even enter another number after that. The only time you have to look at trees after the tee area is if trees are getting more difficult. To determine the difficulty factor for trees by considering the following for each shot that is to be played on the hole based on the scratch player's ability to recover from the trees. You want to look at the number, height, and density at mid-season. I'll show you a picture about that, of trees in each landing area and on the line of play to the next target. The distance of trees from the center of the landing zone, for example, trees that closely border a narrow fairway landing zone, are more difficult. Trees that closely border a narrow fairway landing zone are more difficult and the shot length of the shot, the length of the shot required to reach the next landing zone or green is a factor as well. Recovery is typically easier with a shorter shot since more types of shots can be played. We want to look at the presence of low-hanging branches that impact swing and obstruct recovery shots. Are there conditions under the trees that impact the lie of the ball? What is the proximity of trees to the ball when in flight that may result in a significant loss of distance? And are there conditions along the line of play from the trees that limit shot options due to intervening obstacles? For example, a crossing obstacle on a shot from the trees to a green requires a low shot to avoid the branches, but you can't hit a low shot because you have a crossing obstacle. Recovery is based on the scratch player's ability for two reasons. First, it's easier to visualize how a scratch golfer is able to recover from the trees, which enables our teams to be more consistent. Think about your better golfers. Watch the pros. I mean, the pros aren't scratch. I know they're beyond it, but watch how they recover from trees the few occasions when they get into it. We had an amazing, maybe I'll ask Caroline if she's going to be around Monday, and I would videotape this one definitely. Caroline Ingalls, Knopf, now married, was on the LPGA tour, and she has just joined us at OGA. She took over for Monica Vaughn. Maybe I can have her come out and show us how she hits shots out of the trees to show us what a better golfer looks like hitting shots out of trees, because that was one of the better learning experiences I had from a calibration. Anyway, second to that, the bogey golfer receives a higher weighting factor. That's the icky math that happens in the back of the program. I'll show you what those forms look like too. I'm glad I don't have to do that math. The impact of the trees rating is higher for the bogey golfer, even if it's the same table plus adjustments rating as for the scratch golfer. So if they both have a 4, that 4 for the bogey counts as more when you're adding up everything for the course rating and bogey rating. Here's a good look at mid-season conditions. You want to think about what the trees look like at the time of the year when the course is regularly maintained and scores are being posted for handicap purposes. We want to think about these trees. If we were rating a course early in the season or late in the season, and that course looked like the trees on the left, we don't get a lot of this in Oregon, but we do get some. We want to think about those trees full of leaves. We want to think about everything all full and filled out and beautiful instead of just scrappy little branches. A couple of notes. If trees are overhanging or otherwise reducing the effective width of the fairway, that may also be recognized with a width adjustment to fairway. Excuse me. If you have a tree overhanging branches that block a shot to the green, they may also be recognized with an obstructed adjustment to the green target. And again, those are per approach shot. Okay, here's the tree table. You have one table for scratch and bogey as well as both genders. You want to use either one shot hole or 2 or more shot hole row. You want to start with an overall assessment from the teeing area. So when you're zipping along from tee to tee, don't just go out for the first landing zone. Stop at the tee box, take a quick look. First thing, look at trees. Second thing, can you hit a full tee shot from where you are? Sometimes you get down to a landing zone and you might not have realized there's a dog leg in there. Anyway, so from the table, I want you to either use the 1 shot or 2 shot hole, overall assessment from the tee, and then adjust at the landing zones. So to determine the scratch tree value and then re-enter the table for bogey. So for instance, I had a moderate problem for a scratch is a 4, but there's a tougher landing zone for bogey, I can have a 5. You can assign a 0 if trees do not exist. Reminder that all of these values can be adjusted plus or minus 1 point. If you have somebody on the tee box saying those trees are 2s, minor, and somebody else saying those trees are 4s or moderate. Take that 3. You can go plus or minus 1 at any situation. So off the tee, pick minor, moderate, significant, extreme, and then you can adjust down or up as you go. So looking at the number, height, and density of trees at the landing area and along the line of play, this would be a fun shot to hit if I was over on the left hand. If my green was up there, that's a lot of trees and they're really tall. Think about the length of the shot required to reach the next landing zone, whether it's the fairway or the green. Is it a long iron wood or a short iron? Recovery is typically easier with a shorter shot, and there are more types of shots that can be played. Looking at this hole, if I was back in the fairway, way back here, I was way back here trying to hit to the green, that tree might be a lot more trouble at 150, 200 yards out. If that green were closer to, if that tree were closer to the green, it would be a little bit less trouble because there are multiple ways I can play that shot than if it were far back at where you need to hit a longer club. If a ball is in the trees, does it mean a golfer will likely need an extra shot in order to reach the green? So do I have to play out sideways or backwards even to reach your next landing zone or to reach a green? Can I hit a low shot, high shot, whatever? Again, think about how a better player, a scratch player, would be able to hit that shot. The presence of low-hanging branches that impact swing and obstruct recovery shots. This would be a pretty tough shot for just about everybody. Why is that showing that still shows? Okay, I'm stuck on a slide here on my side. Never mind. The presence of low-hanging branches that impacts the swing and obstructs recovery shots that can increase the playability or the effect of trees. Sometimes don't just stand on the tee. Go down and into the trees and take a look through it. It only takes a couple seconds. You're on the way anyway. It wouldn't be too hard. Conditions under the trees that impact the lie of the ball. If I hit a golf ball anywhere in here, that would not be fun at all. And the proximity of trees along to the ball went along the flight of your ball. So if I were on the left side of this fairway trying to hit to this green, I have trees hanging out all over this left-hand side, and I've got to have a creek that runs along here. That's going to make these trees play a lot more difficult. A quick obstruction example. If the trees, I did my pretty squiggly outline that shows how close these trees truly are together. If the trees obstruct a shot to the landing zone, whether it's fairway or green, I can add an obstruction. Note, do not apply obstruction if off of the tee shot. You're going to use the shoot if it's off of the tee shot. You're going to use the shoot chart. We'll get to that in just a second. This is what I'm talking about, conditions along the line of play from trees that limit shot options due to intervening obstacles. For example, a crossing obstacle on a shot from the trees to a green requiring a low shot to avoid the branches, but you have carry to get over the water. This would not be an easy shot for anybody, scratch or bogey. This is something that you might have to play out sideways because you can't play it high to get over the water and low to get up over the trees or under the tree branches. Quick overhead examples. This landing zone would probably be a minor or a 2. When you go up a little bit closer to the green or further forward, that is maybe more moderate, maybe a 4. Could be possibly a 3, depending on where your shot is, depending on your player. The next hole right next to it, there's your, this could be a moderate all the way along this hole. The trees are on both sides of the fairway and fairly thick. On the hole right next to it, you can see it's considerably more narrow. I would start at a 6 on this hole and potentially Depending on which tee you're from and the distance, you might have a shoot, which is now listed as an H adjustment. The shoot would be added to that as well. Tee shot for shoot. This is tee shot only. We used to be able to count it anywhere along the line of play. This is a tee shot only situation. You want to measure the length, clear the shoot, and then you want to measure the width is between existing tree branches. So the branches are up in the air. So the easiest way to do that is to get two people on either side of the fairway, figure out where the edges are, and then measure across to each other. Note that shoots on subsequent shots, so not the tee shot, are rated only using the obstruct adjustment. Quick example, if I have a shoot that is at 120 yards of depth away, and the trees are 16 yards across from each other, so 120 yards by 16, what is your shoot adjustment? So 120 yards, 16 wide, 120. That would be a 2 adjustment added to your trees. So if my trees are already a 4 or a 6, that would take the trees to a 6 or possibly an 8. And that can change from tee to tee. We used to call pampas grass, those big tall pampas grass, we used to call those trees if they were really big. But we want to think about the life cycle of pampas grass. What time of the year are we rating the course? Is the grass regularly trimmed, or is it wild, just grown out? You want to discuss this situation before rating. Don't call it trees if it's only big for part of the year. Langdon Farms is a good example. It only gets really big at about September. So only for September, October, November does it get to that point where you might be calling it trees. So most of the year it starts out like this. It gets cut in the fall every year, starts growing in the spring, starts getting some sprigs, gets to a little bit grown, spends most of the year, spends June, July, August like this, and then it starts getting a little bit bigger and a little bit crazier. But if you get to a course and you have something like this that's there all the time, they don't cut it, they don't trim it, something big and gnarly like this one, it's never cut, never trimmed, we might also consider this trees, or we might consider it as on our or as extreme rough and count it as a lateral. So it depends on the very situation. Does anybody have any questions about trees? And we are cutting it right to 5 o'clock right now. If anybody wants to go over the homework hole that I put up from earlier this week, I can do that. If you want to go over the homework hole that I put up last week, I can pull that up. But I'm going to stop the presentation for today. Anybody have any questions? The majority of the stuff, we just have green surface and psychology and some examples and stuff to go over tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and stop the presentation, the recording. Stop recording. Again, if anybody has any questions,